You're listening to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. This episode brought to you by the Easy Home Buyer, serving the Spokane and Coeur d'Alene area. If you're an investor in the greater Spokane area looking to connect with wholesalers, look no further than the Easy Home Buyer. Click on the link in the show notes to be put on their buyer list today, and check out episode 17 with the Easy Home Buyer founder, Chad Young. And by FlexiSpot, the maker of ergonomic furniture. If you're looking for a new adjustable desk, look no further than the E7 standing desk. The retractable frame allows you to adjust the desk's width from 43.4 inches out to 74.8 inches. So you can have a desk that is over 6 feet long that adjusts in height to fit the needs of your space and office. Save $20 now with the offer code WSE720 at checkout. Well, welcome back to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. In today's episode, I chat with Landon Cunningham, the VP of Investor Client Relations at Inland Capital out of Spokane. In this episode with Landon, we talk about hard money lending, the real estate market across the state, and how private and hard money lenders can support you in growing your real estate business. Full disclosure, we've used Inland Capital in the past as we were getting our own real estate business off the ground. And that brings me to today's investor highlight and the idea of OPM, or other people's money. If you're new to real estate, you might have seen this acronym in blog posts or in Facebook threads. OPM stands for other people's money, or the idea that you use other people's money as capital for your real estate project. What I love about using other people's money is it creates a win-win situation for everyone involved. The private or hard money lender makes interest on their cash, while the investor gets to make money on the buying, rehabbing, and selling of real estate. In our real estate business, my wife and I like to keep our money working hard. In episode 21, I talk about this idea about making your money work hard for you instead of you working for it. And in some cases, we have our money working so hard in building our real estate business that when an opportunity comes along, we might not be in a position to jump. We're in the middle of that situation right now. Out of nowhere, an opportunity has presented itself for us to buy a flip. Of course, we're talking about a 1927 house, which has my wife all giddy as she loves rehabbing beautiful old homes and bringing them back to their ultimate glory in a modern way. We weren't expecting this, and our money is hard at work in other ways right now. But like the real estate investors we are, you can't let a good deal pass you by without taking a shot. So we look to partner with others and use their money to put this deal together. There are a lot of ways to use OPM. We've reached out to friends and family who we know might be interested and have some liquid cash. We've talked with a couple banks about bridge loans, and we've talked to hard money lenders like Landon in this episode to see if we can bring a deal together. Now, of course, if you're going to use OPM, you have to know what you're bringing to the table. What's your ARV, or after repair value? What's your plan and budget for the rehab? And what are you personally bringing to the table and making sure this deal stays the course? Sometimes you might be bringing your own money to the table. Or if you are a contractor, you're bringing your skills and knowledge in managing a rehab. As Landon puts it in today's episode, they want to know what skin you got in the game. In today's episode, I talk about the way that we have structured a lot of our deals with OPM. These aren't the only ways, but it's a way that works for us and fits our investment strategy. If you have any thoughts on using investors in your own real estate business and how you leverage OPM, please leave a comment on this episode at WSREIP.com to share your thoughts, or come on the show and let's chat. Always a great way to share your knowledge of investing with others. One last thing before we get to today's chat with Landon from Inland Capital. I will be talking at the REI meetup in Spokane on February 21st at 6:30 p.m. The meetup is held at the Black Diamond Billiard and Eatery in the Spokane Valley. For more information, you can visit REInetworking.com. And if you are going to be there, make sure to stop by and say hi. I always love meeting podcast listeners in person. All right, here is Landon talking about his company, Inland Capital, and using hard money to support your real estate goals. And with that, on with the show. All right, welcome back to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm so excited to have Landon here with me today. Landon works for Inland Capital. We'll be hearing more about his story. Full disclosure, my wife and I use Inland Capital as our hard money lender when we got started in the real estate business. And I reached out to Landon and said, hey, we should have you on the podcast to talk about what Inland Capital can do for real estate investors across the state of Washington. So Landon, thank you for joining me today. Maybe give us a quick, but just your background and a little bit about Inland Capital.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and excited to be talking with you and kind of going over some cool things that we have going on here at Inland Capital. And kind of like you mentioned, we fund real estate investors anywhere in Washington and Idaho, purchasing, either rental properties, fix and flip properties, that type of thing. Little background on Inland Capital. My brother and his business partner started the company in about 2006. And before that, they had worked together for about 5 years over on the west side of the state, kind of Seattle area, King County, Pierce County, Snohomish County, actually going down to the trustee sale and purchasing properties there starting in about 2001.
Wow.
So they bought about 100 properties from 2001 to about 2005 together. Kept some of them as rentals, did a lot of fix and flip deals, and had utilized a private lender over in the Seattle area for about 5 years doing that. And 2006 came around and they were starting to get a little nervous about the market. So they sold most of the fix and flip properties that they had going on, kind of slowed their buying down, and actually relocated to the Spokane area and started purchasing investment properties here in Eastern Washington, and then also kind of transitioned into the funding side of the business instead of just solely on the purchasing side. They kind of saw the need for a lender like that here in Spokane, and also were frustrated by some of the lenders that they had been working with in how their underwriting kind of took, kind of the amount of time it took to kind of review and underwrite a deal. They were just going like, this just is taking way too long. There's nobody in Spokane that's helping people buy at the trustee sale, at the foreclosure sales. So we can kind of go in there. We can provide information on distressed properties, and we can also fund these investors when they purchase the properties and look at deals more from a borrower perspective instead of a lender perspective, where every I's got to be dotted, every T's got to be crossed. Instead, we can kind of go in and, evaluate deals really quickly and turn funding around really quickly for the client, which hopefully allows them to get better deals. So they started doing that in 2006 here in Spokane. I grew up on the west side of the state and moved over in 2009 and started working with both of those guys, doing some fix and flip properties in Idaho, in kind of all around Spokane. And then actually, I think it was probably 2010 or 2011, actually bought an RV here in Spokane, and we started buying a lot of properties in the Seattle area, actually like Woodby Island, like Eatonville, like kind of rural areas, but we were finding just killer deals. And we actually bought an RV, and we would go over and stay in the RV for 7 to 10 days, usually meet with contractors, have the contractors come out and kind of get the whole project lined up, work with them on the whole thing. And we did that for about 2 years, and then that got a little old. So then kind of stayed in Spokane, still buying a lot of properties over the coming years, all around Washington and Idaho. But then I transitioned in about 2016, 2015, from focusing on purchasing rental properties and fix and flip deals to working on the lending side. So right now I probably spend 80% of my time working with clients who are buying investment properties and getting those funded for them.
Very cool. Do you still have any investment properties of your own? A couple rentals or anything?
Yeah, so still have actually only one rental property on the west side of the state. Then we have multifamily in Moses Lake, a few rentals here in Spokane, and actually in Chewelah, north of Spokane. We bought a motel about a year and a half ago in Sandpoint. So yeah, definitely have a few projects going, a bunch of rental properties, but everything that we had on the west side, we've sold except for one property. And we kind of started doing that about 3 years ago, and essentially just did 1031 exchanges on all of those properties. Almost all of the stuff we owned, kind of from Arlington all the way down to Renton, were single family properties that were built after 2000. They cash flowed okay. But we were able to sell those and purchase an 8 unit in Chewelah, 19 doors in Sandpoint. So just you doing a 1031 exchange, kind of deferring that income. And so that's been really good. But yeah, definitely more of a focus here on the eastern side of the state in northern Idaho now.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you had a lot of value in those homes with the run up of the economy on the west side. What a great idea, right? Wait till you get a lot of pent up equity in those houses, and then 1031 them into more doors over on the east side. That's such a great strategy. I really like that.
Yeah, it worked out well. I mean, there's definitely a learning curve with kind of getting involved with rentals and that type of thing when I started. I think it was 2008 or 2009 when I bought my first property. It was, kind of got a couple rentals and realized there's kind of a happy medium between the quality of rental property you own, how much income it's going to bring in. But if you don't want to be a slumlord, but at the same time, if you have just the premium properties, especially if they're single family, there's the law of diminishing returns, and there's just kind of a cap in a lot of areas. So we kind of felt like we had a really good idea on that in Seattle, but the values were going up so high. We're like, we can sell these properties, take all that equity, and we can buy an 8 unit instead of one single family. So I mean, the cash flow,
that's great.
Pretty much. I would say on the one in Chewelah, we probably went up 4 times without having another dollar out of pocket. So that was kind of kind of a little
Makes
bit
sense.
A transition point there.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Inland Capital. And Inland Capital is a hard money lender. I don't know if there's a different term that you guys use, but the term I've always used is a hard money lender for what you do. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about some of the reasons why investors might choose to consider a hard money lender like Inland Capital over a conventional loan? Like, what is the benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we go a hard money lender, private lender. A lot of times I'll say private lender. It sounds better, but the reality is it's all kind of the same. But yeah, so most of the time individuals are utilizing us. There's multiple reasons, but primarily it's because they want to write either a cash offer or they want to have a very quick close, or they're purchasing an asset where you can't even finance it with traditional bank financing. So if you're buying a property, through remote bidding on auction.com or through trustee sale or foreclosure sales, you can't get conventional financing on those. You actually have to have the cash and go down to the auction with the cash in order to purchase those properties. So a lot of times, those are the deals we're funding. But even for deals that are on the market, whether or not it's a short sale, which we haven't seen short sales in years now, maybe we'll start to see some come through. But for bank-owned properties, estate sales, even stuff that's on the MLS, individuals will still utilize us because they can go in, they can write a 7-day close. They don't have to put a financing contingency. They don't have to do an inspection if they don't want to. So especially when the market was really hot up until maybe 8 months ago, individuals are going in, they're going, well, we've got 6 offers, but if we can write a cash offer and we can put a 7-day close in there with no financing contingency, no inspection contingency, maybe the estate that's selling this property will go with us, even though it's a little bit of a lower offer. It's kind of, they know it's a for sure thing versus, financing contingency could take 30 or 40 days to close. So a lot of times that's kind of what our clients are utilizing us for. And also just a lot less, I don't want to say less underwriting, but I would say just a lot more straightforward. Between my brother and I, we've done about 90 properties together. And then between my brother and his business partner, they've done well over 300. So just in general, somebody could give me a deal and I could, pull up my spreadsheet or, just on a sticky note and within 5 minutes kind of determine whether or not it's a deal based on what the purchase price is, the renovation budget, how long they think it's going to take them to do the project, what the after repaired value is going to be. It doesn't take long to kind of plug in those numbers. And, hard money, private money is primarily asset based. So we're still going to look at some stuff like, we may look at credit or a tax return depending on the type of deal. If the exit strategy is to refinance out of our loan because they're going to have to get that permanent loan. But in general, what we're looking at is the asset that they're buying. We want to see that they have profit potential in the deal. They have some skin in the game when they purchase it. And if they have those things, I mean, it's not uncommon for somebody to bring us a deal and for us to close it, 5 or 6 days later. It's great if we have 10 days, we consider that like a really long closing. And it's not uncommon if a lender bails on a deal or something falls apart for somebody to bring us a deal on a Monday or Tuesday and for us to be able to turn that deal around on like Thursday or Friday, like 48 hours later. Not ideal. It's great when we have like 10 days, but at the same time, we don't have to do appraisals prior to funding. We pull our own comps. The clients and their agents send us comps. We're very familiar with the markets in Washington and Idaho, and we can just turn things around super quick.
Yeah. And I think the 3 properties we worked on with you guys, the way we set it up, and I want to talk about this because there are different ways you can fund this. And I think those are different strategies. The way that we funded ours was we used Inland Capital. We used you as the purchase price, and then you used our own money as the renovation.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one way you can set it up is you use, and I think ours were like 7 or 10 day closes. Just exactly like you said, we could go in with all cash offers. We got these homes under contract. And then we're able to close within 7 days, having you fund the purchase and then using our money to fund the rehab and then being able to get out of that within 6 to 8, 10 months, ideally. Can you talk about other strategies that people have used when they use Inland Capital?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you fund the whole thing? Can you fund the purchase and the reno? Like, what are some other?
We can. And one thing that you can always count on is anybody here at the office. We're a smaller company, but I always kind of say we're a smaller company. There's about 9 of us here, but we have plenty of money to lend. So, like, if the deal makes sense, like, we'll figure out a way to, to fund it, and we can do it very quickly. But other kind of ways that we've set it up, and every deal with real estate is a little unique, especially with real estate investing. So anytime I have a client or a conversation with a new client, I kind of go over the general parameters of what we look for. And typically the one moving part is how much of the deal like that we'll fund, and also whether or not we'll fund the rehab and how much of the rehab we're going to fund. Because I can kind of go over exactly what we can offer, but then if somebody brings a deal and I plug it into my spreadsheet and I show that it's going to be break even or it's going to be a $10,000 loss. And they're like, well, you said you could fund it with 5% down and you could do some of the rehab. And it's like, well, that would be a deal that would be a profitable deal. What you just taught me is garbage. And there's a lot of garbage deals that people are trying to get funding on where I'm just going I'm like, we want to fund deals. I'm not trying to find holes in your deal. I don't see how you're going to make any money. And I'm using the numbers you gave me, like your fair market value, your renovation budget, what you're buying the property for. I'm like, what am I missing here? So every deal is a little bit unique, but in general, as long as the deal pencils, we can figure out a way to make it happen. A very popular option that we've had the last 5 years has been our cross collateral option. So if you own a investment property anywhere in Washington, anywhere in Idaho that has good equity in it. So example, somebody owns a duplex, it's worth $600,000. They owe $300,000 on it. Well, what we can do is when they bring us a new deal to fund, we can put a second position on that duplex. There's no additional cost to do it. And then what it allows us to do is finance a higher amount of the purchase price for the new deal they're bringing and potentially offer some rehab funds as well. So it really depends on what that collateral looks like. But if the goal for the client is to really preserve their capital, we do have some options like that. But it's very important to us that somebody has skin in the game, and that's either going to be in the form of a down payment or in the form of collateral for another property or something like that. There's a lot of lenders that talk about being able to lend 100% of the purchase price and 100% of the rehab. That's definitely not our game. We've never borrowed like that. We always have skin in the game with every deal that we buy, with every fix and flip that we've done, rental property and that type of thing. And that's kind of, just kind of the way that we're set up and the way that we're comfortable lending. If for some reason you take a loss on your deal, we want you to take that loss, not for it to go through your mind like, well, I'll just walk away from the property. They funded 100% of the purchase and the rehab, the market turned. I'm going to be done. We want people to really be tied to their properties and run their numbers really well, because when that happens, we feel like they're getting better buys as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a perfect lead into kind of my next question here, which is, what are 3 things a investor should consider when investing in a real estate deal through someone like Inland Capital? Like, what do you like to see? So, one of the things we know is I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. So if I'm reaching out to you, Landon, what are maybe like 3 key things that as an investor you like to see and hear when I'm coming to you to see if we can put a deal together?
So number 1, I would say, is profit in the deal. Like, you want to see that it's going to be a profitable deal, whether it's going to be a fix and flip, or if it's going to be something that you're going to do a renovation on, refinance and keep as a rental. So profit is definitely important. If it is going to be something that a client is refinancing, obviously it's very important to have a good exit strategy, or potentially a lender credit union, something like that lined up. So that if you do purchase this property, you use hard money, you do the renovation, 6 months later, you reach out for, to refi the property, and there may be some things that you haven't thought about or different issues. So definitely making sure you've maybe talked with a takeout lender. And that's the one reason that we kind of look at credit. And we don't have to pull credit on most of the deals we fund. We just want to see that someone has a decent credit standing, because if they don't, and their exit strategy is to refi, and we don't look at that and we fund a deal for them, it's actually going to put them in a bad situation, because they're not going to be able to get the refinance.
Sure.
And some deals will pencil really well as a rental property, but it may not pencil as a fix and flip, and vice versa. Looking at those 2 are super important. Especially in this market, I think managing liquidity is very important, making sure that you have enough funds to complete the project. And one thing that we've seen a lot in the last couple months is from anybody that's new to real estate, I'd say probably in the last like 3 years or so, is they got really used to their properties selling the week they put them on the market.
Yeah.
We have a fair amount of clients in the Boise area, and some of them are newer clients in the last like 2 years. And no joke, like they'd put a property on the market. Typically they'd get over what they thought they were going to get when we funded it. Sometimes it'd be multiple offer situation. It would take a week. They're under contract, and they just kept that going. And they could even mismanage projects to some extent, where they'd say the renovation was going to take 3 or 4 months and it was going to cost $50,000, but instead it took 7 months and cost $80,000. But then they're selling the property for so much more than they thought. They're actually still making money, which at a certain point, it's almost frustrating, because you're getting really lucky right now. It's actually not anything you're doing. Your timing has just been very, very lucky. So we want to make sure that if the market doesn't appreciate 1% a month, like it had done for years, and actually, goes down a little bit, that you still have plenty of room to at least walk away from the deal, get your get your money back if you sell the property, and hopefully not take a loss. So I definitely think in this market, looking at liquidity, making sure that you're comfortable if you end up holding a property, if you're trying to sell it 3 or 4 or 5 months, and not count on it to sell in the first month. Because it was a real thing, especially in that Boise market this summer, where we're getting calls from clients, and it's like, my house has been on the market for 4 weeks. We've had like 6 showings. We haven't had any offers. Like, do you know what's going on? And I'm like, oh my, like, this is a very normal market. Normally you have 3 or 4 months of inventory. That's kind of a balanced buyer seller market. So especially with new clients, just making sure they have the funds available, that they know that they may hold the property for several months, plenty of profit in the deal, and that type of thing. Probably the 3 most important things.
I like that.
And then if I had to add one more, and this is just because it's something that we've personally dealt with in the last couple of years, and that is having a crew kind of ready to go once you close on the deal, because contractors have gotten very busy.
So busy.
There's been material shortages, supply chain issues, and so making sure you kind of have some of those things lined up, I think, is extremely beneficial because we've been on the other end and we've seen a complete 180 from, when we started in 2008, or when I started in 2008, 2009, like the contractors I was working with, they would finish up a project and it was like, they're calling me, they're texting me like, when's the next one? Let me know. Yeah. And then it was about 5 years later that completely changed. And I'm like, hey, I got a project for you in Arlington. They're like, I can get you a bid in about 2 weeks. And I'm like, so especially for new investors, I think having had conversations with contractors and figured out that aspect is super important so you don't get burned. And also, if you close on the deal and you have holding costs with potential interest costs, insurance, property taxes, all that kind of stuff. So making sure that some of those things are lined up, because that's been a struggle even for the projects that we have and contractors that we've used for years now. They're so much more expensive and just way busier. It's been frustrating, but it is what it is, and you kind of have to adjust.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. Having your contractors lined up, you have to have those relationships, I think, with contractors at this point, because there'd be nothing worse. I can only see the panic in my own eyes saying that, great, we closed on a property, call the contractor like, yeah, we'll be there in 6 months. I'll be like, I can't have you be here in 6 months.
Not 6 months.
That's not going to work.
6 days, maybe.
Yeah, 6 days. Yeah, I need you here by the weekend. Like, we got to get this thing going.
Yes.
Exactly. So that's something great to be talking about. Can you talk a little bit about what are you seeing in the market right now? As a lender, as a private money lender, what are you seeing in the market right now from your end of things? Are you slowing down on the lending side? Are there still deals to be had? What's happening for you?
So, I mean, general terms, I think everybody kind of knows. Obviously, there's been a little bit of slowdown the last 6-7 months. Interest rates have kind of bumped up a little bit. On our side, lending slowed down, I'd say starting in about July for a few months. And that was kind of a little bit intentional on our part, probably because in like April or May, we were kind of getting a little concerned. I mean, the amount of appreciation that we're seeing in some of these markets.
Yeah, right.
Unbelievable. I mean, you look at
it's just not sustainable.
No.
You just know it's not sustainable.
No. And, so if you look at getting a down payment from a client and, if our down payment, 12 months ago was at 10%, we're starting to look at that 10% down payment. We're going like, well, if this deal had been brought to us 3 months ago, essentially like we're funding the same amount because the market had gone up 10% in like 3 months. I mean, It was crazy. The Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Boise kind of markets just exploded. So we slowed down a little bit. Some of that was intentional just because we wanted to make sure that clients were kind of managing their liquidity properly, that they were going to be able to get through their projects. And also, we just kind of have a philosophy that, cash is kind of king when the market starts to turn a little bit. And the people that run out of funds, whether it's on the lending side or on the purchase side, if you're an investor, if you don't have any funds and you start to see a lot of deals coming through, that's not a great spot to be in. And, I came in at the end of the last recession, like 2008, 2009. My brother started in 2001. So they kind of saw a lot of people lose a lot of money, and it kind of made them be a little bit more conservative kind of going into this. Not that I'm saying it's going to be like that by any means,
right?
But just kind of, watching those things for sure. But on the deal side, I feel like in the last 2 months, probably starting late November or December, like there have been some really good deals that have been coming through. Some of them have been, some of them have been a wholesale deal, some estate sales, but we're finally starting to see some trustee sale foreclosure properties actually sell. So I think there's actually some really good opportunity. And even if you're keeping stuff as rentals, I'm just a firm believer you really make your money in the buy. When you buy the property, getting that purchase price down and making sure you have plenty of margin. And if interest rates are a little bit higher or a lot higher, and you're having to refinance it, a rental or a multifamily, and the rate's 7.5% or 7%, and it was 4% just a year ago. If you're buying that property for 20% less than you were 9 months ago, and you can still make the numbers work, I mean, I'm optimistic in about a year, interest rates are going to be down from where they're at now, and you can refi the property in a year or 18 months. And here you've made a good purchase. You had a little bit higher interest rate for 18 months, and now you're going to refi, and it's going to be an even better cash flowing property. I mean, some of the numbers I think people were purchasing properties at, early last year, the cap rates and how aggressive people were. I was going like, woof. Like my brother and I think we bought 2 rental properties in the last 2 years, which is not normally we purchase a little bit more than that, but it was like the numbers were just, I mean, people were very, very aggressive. So trying to, watch that. And I'm not scared if rates are a little bit higher. You kind of know that, you can plug that in, and then you can refi hopefully, in a year or two and get that lower rate if you're getting the deal.
Yeah. And I just wonder too, does that, in my mind, as I'm just thinking through this, I don't know, I want to get into kind of what your rates are, but most private lender rates are somewhere around the 10 to 12%. And there's this really interesting thing in your mind when you're like, well, I can go to a bank and get a loan for 3.5% or 4%.
Yeah, right.
Why am I going to pay you 10 to 12?
Yeah.
Where in today's world, you're going to a bank for 7.5 to 8.
Yeah.
The difference between that and 10 to 12%, and I can close in 10 days, and I'm not dealing with the bank and all the paperwork.
Yes.
Are you seeing, is that some of the balance as a private, on the private money, on the private lending side? Is that some of the balance? And then maybe even get into, I don't know what your percentage is and kind of what a deal looks like for you today. Maybe talk about that. What's it look like?
For sure. And that is, I mean, that's a great point. And we're definitely seeing some of that where, I mean, some of the rates that, people are getting on the commercial side or even on the, just refinancing standard properties it's unbelievable how much it's gone up. So I think for sure that's something people are looking at when they're getting deals under contract. And I think it actually helps our business a little bit. And the other thing is the way that we operate, we run a private fund. So that's where most of our capital comes from. So we already have all of those funds available. And we kind of have a set rate that we pay our investors. So as rates have kind of gone up, a lot of our competitors have had to raise their rates because they're tied to different lines of credit or things like that where they're getting their funds from. We just pay a preferred return to our investors. So we've seen more business kind of coming in the last couple months with interest rates rising. And it hasn't, so it hasn't been like a terrible thing actually for us on the lending side.
Yeah.
And our rates are kind of just where you mentioned. It really depends on the loan duration someone's looking for. If they're looking for a super short loan or if they're wanting it to be, a little bit longer. And we're always going to be shorter term. When I say long term, that'd be like 18 months. We always have an option to extend. We never want to put anybody in a bad situation, but we are a short-term lender. So even if somebody had a loan on our books for 18 months, we're going to ask for a project update and give them an extension if they need one, as long as we can kind of see things are progressing along and the project's not just sitting in the same state. That's always the kind of the worry for us. But our rates are kind of, right where you mentioned, depending on the type of property, the way they're purchasing it, kind of caps out at 12%. And, for kind of our top tier clients, it's going to be like 10.75. So that's kind of, and then it's an interest only payment. Most of the loans we write are for 12 months. There's never a prepayment penalty on the loans. We want to see people get through their projects. Usually we put an early payoff discount on the loan. So if they actually have the project turned or refied super quick, they actually get a discount on the loan fee.
No, I like that. That's a great one. And I will say again, full disclosure, I've worked with Inland Capital, and we did have one when we were getting into it. We had one property. I think our original loan with Inland was a 6 or 8 month loan, and we had 3 projects going at once, and the one project just kind of got stalled, and then we got hit with the city came and shut us down for a month to figure that all out. And so, but you guys were great. I mean, you were great to work with. I mean, we were, gave us an extension. I mean, you could see we were working on it. It wasn't like we were up and running.
We absolutely. And thanks for saying that. Yeah. Truly, our goal was to work.
It was great.
With people that we've worked with before. It's way easier to keep those relationships going. And, we do a lot of business on the west side of the state. And like I said, in the Boise area, but we're located here in Spokane. And it's a small town. If you're going to run a business where you're not being, kind to your customers and trying to take care of them, you're not going to get a lot of repeat business. And we have a lot of repeat business and clients that have worked with us for years and years. And that's kind of the goal. So.
Yeah, and I think a big part, just for other investors out there, I mean, our numbers were still really good on this property. I mean, it was the property we made the most amount on when we flipped. Even holding it longer than we expected to hold it, it worked out for everybody.
No,
we all got our money back and got our money out, and made a little profit along the way. So, so that's great. Landon, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today. As we get ready to kind of sign off here, if people want to learn more about Inland Capital, ways that you support real estate investors, where's the best place for them to go?
So 2 options. They can go to our website, which is inlandcap.com. So that's INLANDCAP.com. Or they're welcome to give me a call. I don't know if I'm going to give my phone number out.
Yeah, that's okay.
But yeah, they can find me on there. They can find my email or my phone number. Love to chat with anybody that's involved in real estate investing, kind of go over the options that we have. If I had to say there's one thing that makes us unique as a lender is funding deals at trustee sales. Most lenders do not fund deals like bring cashier's checks down to the courthouse. So auction.com, if you're on their website, you can kind of see how many properties, how many foreclosure sales they have coming up over the next few months. And it's substantial. And there's not lenders that are wanting to lend on those properties because they don't essentially they don't either know or they don't want to spend the time to be able to verify title, get funds ready, and actually help people buy those assets. So if anybody's curious about that, I'd love to chat with them about remote bidding, purchasing at trustee sales, or anything like that as well. And I appreciate you having me on to kind of talk about this stuff.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you and all that you do to support real estate investors like myself. It was great. It was how we got started. We flipped a couple homes using Inland Capital and then built up our own coffers. And now we have our own and we use our own HELOCs and there's other ways. So if you're getting into real estate investing, it's a great way to get in. If the deal works, there's money out there. And I mean, that's number one, to your point. You've got to make money on the buy. And as we kind of head into this next era of real estate, I think that's something to keep in mind. If you're not finding somebody that'll fund the deal, then maybe it's not a deal. That's, everybody runs their numbers and you got to be able to, put the numbers together.
Exactly.
But, I mean, that's definitely a big part of it. So anyway, but Landon, thank you again so much for being here. That's inlandcap.com. We will have the links to the website and everything else in the show notes. You can see those before. Landon, thanks again for taking time with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.